I could feel cold rain soaking through my clothes, mixing with the warm blood pooling behind my head. I was flat on my back at the bottom of an open elevator shaft on the 34th floor of my own building. My legs wouldn't move. My hands were freezing. All around me was dark steel, exposed concrete, and the sharp smell of fresh cement. I looked up through the dark frame of the shaft. 2 figures were standing right at the edge, looking down at me. It was Theodore, my fiancé, the man whose ring was currently on my left hand. Next to him was Judith, my best friend, the woman who had slept on my couch in college when she couldn't afford rent. Judith was wearing my favorite black wool coat, the one I had left in my office yesterday afternoon. "Is she moving?" Theodore asks, his voice echoing casually down the shaft. "No," Judith replied with a quiet, cold chuckle. She fell 30 feet straight down into the pit. The cables broke clean. "Nobody survives that, Theo." "Good," Theodore said. "I didn't want to do this the hard way, but she was going to ruin everything. She spent 2 hours yesterday digging through the steel delivery logs. She knew the alloy grade wasn't right." "She was always way too picky about the details," Judith sighed. "That was her problem. She thought she was the only person in this city who knew how to build a high-rise. What about her family? Her dad's going to be crushed." "Her dad is 80 years old and sitting in a care home in upstate New York. He won't even understand what happened. We tell the press it was a tragic industrial accident, a failed winch line during an after-hours site inspection. Simple, clean. Come on, get in the car, it's freezing out here, and we have a press briefing at 9 in the morning." I tried to scream, but my mouth just filled with blood. I watched their shadows disappear into the gray light of the city. I had spent 6 years of my life building Thompson Design from a tiny 2-room office into a billion-dollar firm. I had paid off Theodore's gambling debts when his private firm went under. I had given Judith a high-paying executive job and 20% of my company's shares. And right here, on the cold floor of my own building, they left me to die in the rain like trash. A sudden, violent gasp tore through my throat. My eyes flew open in bed, my chest rising and falling fast as I fought for air. My hands frantically scrambled across my neck and chest, searching for open wounds, broken ribs, or wet blood. There was nothing. No pain, no broken bones, no cold rain. I wasn't at the bottom of a dark elevator pit. I was sitting in my own bed in my apartment on East 72nd Street. The morning sun was coming through the blinds, laying long bars of yellow light across the hardwood floor. When the apartment intercom buzzed, I threw off the covers and swung my feet onto the cool wood floor. My legs worked perfectly. I walked over to the wall unit and pressed the button. "Yes?" I asked, my voice raspy and rough. "Good morning, Miss Thompson." Edgar's voice came through the speaker from the front desk. "Your car is pulled up out front for your 8 o'clock meeting with Mr. Griffin and Miss Abbott. Also, the flower delivery for tonight's launch event just arrived. Should I have them sent up?" "Edgar," I said, staring at my unblemished hands, "what is today's date?" "It's Tuesday, October 14th, Miss Thompson." Edgar chuckled slightly. "Big day today. The launch party for the tower is tonight at the St. Regis." "October 14th, I whispered, a chill running down my spine. October 14th, exactly 1 year ago today. Today was the day I was supposed to announce my engagement to Theodore at the grand launch event for our new downtown tower project. Today was the day I signed the paperwork giving him full control over my firm's bank accounts. I walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Staring back at me was a 28-year-old woman with clear skin, bright eyes, and no scars. I looked healthy. I looked whole. But inside, every single thing I used to feel, trust, love, loyalty was completely gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The universe had reset the clock. It had dropped me back at the start line, fully aware of every snake in the grass. They thought they were going to kill me, steal my life's work, and walk away with millions. They had no idea I was about to turn their entire world into a graveyard. At 6 in the morning, I dialed my corporate attorney's direct line. It rang 3 times before he picked up. Kaisley? Lance Trun's tired, muffled voice came through the line. It's 6 in the morning. Is there an emergency at the construction site? Lance, listen to me very carefully, I said, keeping my tone dead steady. I need you to act immediately, and I need you to do it without asking questions right now. Okay, Lance said, the sound of his mattress springs rustling as he sat up. I'm listening. What's going on? First, I want you to go into the corporate system and revoke Theodore Griffin's authority over the central operating account. Take him off as a primary signatory right now. Wait, Kaisley, Theodore is the CFO. You two are signing the joint development loan at the event tonight. If I pull his access now, the bank won't process the funding advance tomorrow morning. He isn't getting near that funding advance, Lance. Do it now. Next, I want you to lock Judith Abbott out of our main design servers, change all her administrative passwords, remove her remote access from her home computer, and freeze her company credit cards. Kaisley, Lance paused. Silence stretched over the line for 2 long seconds. Judith is your best friend, is your vice president of design. Did something happen between you 3? What happened, Lance, is that I woke up. If Judith tries to log into the main server from her phone or laptop today, I want an alert sent straight to my screen. If she comes to the office, have security tell her that her pass has been suspended pending an internal check. If we do this publicly, your board of directors is going to panic. They think Theodore is the person keeping the financial side of this project stable. The board will do what I tell them to do, or I'll replace them by the end of the week. Get the paperwork ready. I'll be in your office by 8:30 to sign the formal orders. Understood, Lance replied, his tone shifting into pure professional focus. I'll start processing the revocations now. I hung up and immediately dialed my lead job site supervisor. The roar of heavy diesel engines echoed in the background the second he answered. Boss, morning, Charlie Murillo called out over the site noise. I'm already down at the site on 4th Street. The concrete trucks for the lower floor slabs are lining up outside the gate. Charlie, stop the pours. Say that again, Kaisley? Charlie paused, the heavy background noise dimming as he stepped into a trailer. The drivers are on the clock. If we delay these pours, we lose $50,000 in crew costs today. I don't care about the $50,000. Stop the trucks. I want you to go straight to the staging area on the north side of the yard. Check the steel delivery that came in yesterday afternoon from the port. Look at the manufacturing stamps on the main structural columns. We checked those stamps when the flatbeds arrived on Friday, boss. The paperwork said grade 60 high-strength American steel. The paperwork lies, Charlie. Theodore swapped the shipping manifests at the docks. He brought in low-grade, untested, cheap steel from an unlicensed overseas mill to save $6 million on the frame. I want you to pull 3 samples from that pile right now. Cut them off the main beams, take them to the private testing lab on 10th Street, and run a stress test yourself. If Theodore put low-grade metal into the lower support frames of a 50-story tower, that entire building could warp under high wind loads within 5 years. Charlie's voice dropped low, raw anger rising in his throat. That's murder, Kaisley. That's why you're cutting those samples right now, I told him. Do not let anyone touch those steel piles until I give you the word. Keep your phone on you. I'm on it." By 8 o'clock, I walked out the front doors of my apartment building into the cool autumn morning air. I was wearing a plain, sharply tailored white suit with my hair pulled back tightly. No bright colors yet. Today was about business. As I reached the curb, a large black Maybach pulled up smoothly against the sidewalk, blocking my path to my own car. The rear door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. "Get in, Miss Thompson," a deep, steady voice called out from inside. I stopped on the sidewalk and looked into the dark interior. Sitting in the back seat was Kohen Stafford, 32 years old, the head of Stafford Private Equity, and a man who bought distressed companies and controlled more real estate in Lower Manhattan than any single family in the state. He wore a dark, perfectly fitted suit, his gray eyes fixing on me with total focus. "Mr. Stafford," I said, stepping closer, "I didn't know you spent your mornings blocking traffic on East 72nd Street." "I don't usually," Kohen replied calmly, "but I also don't usually watch a brilliant architect let an amateur thieves bleed her company dry from the inside out." "Careful, Mr. Stafford," I cautioned softly. "Theodore Griffin is still my CFO." "Theodore Griffin is a coward with $4 million in offshore trading debts who spent his afternoon yesterday in a hotel bar with Judith Abbott showing her how to access your private architectural design files." I didn't flinch. In my past life, I would have been shocked. I would have argued, defended my friend, or looked for excuses. Now, hearing it only confirmed what I already knew. "How long have you been trailing my executives, Kohen?" 4 years. 4 years? I repeated, caught off guard. "I wasn't trailing them, Kaisley. I was watching you. I watched you build a firm from nothing. I watched you design 3 of the best buildings in this city before you turned 27. And then I watched you hire Theodore Griffin because you thought you needed a financial guy to handle the board. You made him look smart. You gave him power he didn't earn. And now he's planning to push you out of your own company the moment the tower loan goes through tonight." "He won't make it tonight." A faint, cold smile touched his lips. "I know. I saw your lawyer walk into your office 15 minutes ago with an emergency file. You're stripping his accounts. That's a good start, but it isn't enough." "Why isn't it enough?" "Because the moment you fire Theodore and Judith publicly, your board of directors will lose their minds. They are old, conservative men who care about one thing: stock price. They will try to lock your voting rights, claim you're acting out of personal anger, and force a corporate buyout before the market closes tomorrow. You need a shield, a big one. And I suppose you're offering to be that shield?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a heavy sheet of white paper, and handed it to me. "I'm offering you an absolute partnership. Stafford Equity buys 40% of the floating shares on the private market this morning. I sign an agreement giving you total, permanent control over design, engineering, and board decisions for life. In exchange, we present a united front tonight at the St. Regis." "This is a joint venture agreement," I noted, scanning the document. "And a marriage certificate." "A legal, binding business union," Kohen stated directly. "It combines our capital, locks the board out permanently, and turns Thompson Design into an untouchable fortress. You get total freedom to build whatever you want. I get to ruin Theodore and his backers before lunch." "You sound like you hate him as much as I do." "I hate small men who steal the work of better people because they can't create anything of their own," Kohen said coldly. "Sign the paper, Kaisley. Let's go finish this." I took a pen from my pocket, leaned against the frame of his car, and signed my name on the bottom line before handing it back to him. "I'll see you at the St. Regis at 8 o'clock, Kohen." "Where's something they'll remember?" he murmured, his fingers briefly brushing mine as he took the paper. By 8:30 that evening, the main ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel was packed with 300 of the most powerful people in New York. Real estate moguls, Wall Street bankers, city inspectors, and news reporters were everywhere, drinking high-end champagne under massive glass lights. Near the center of the room stood Theodore and Judith. Theodore was wearing a classic black tuxedo, holding a glass of wine while holding court with 3 senior members of my board. Judith was standing right beside him in a silver sequin dress that was far too flashy for an employee, laughing loudly at something Theodore said, with her hand resting naturally on his forearm. "And so by 11 o'clock tomorrow, the loan papers will be finalized," Theodore was boasting to the board members. "Thompson Design and Development will have total funding for the next 3 years. It's a huge win for all of us." "Where is Kaisley?" a senior board member asked, looking around impatiently. "Theodore, the press photographers are getting restless. You two are supposed to be on stage 20 minutes ago to announce the engagement and the loan deal." "Oh, you know Kaisley," Judith chimed in smoothly, taking a sip from her glass. "She probably got stuck at the office staring at floor plans. She gets so obsessed with the little details that she forgets the big picture. Theodore and I told her to relax, but she just can't help herself." "She'll be here," Theodore said, checking his gold watch. "I picked out a nice, simple, blush-colored dress for her. Very quiet, very traditional. It suits her style. Once she gets here, we sign the documents, take the photos, and wrap this up." Right on cue, the string quartet stopped playing mid-note. The loud chatter in the room instantly dropped into total, dead silence as the heavy double wooden doors at the back of the hall swung wide open. I stood in the doorway at the top of the grand marble staircase. I hadn't worn the blush-colored dress Theodore bought me. I had thrown it straight into the trash can in my apartment 3 hours ago. Instead, I was poured into a custom backless blood-red velvet gown that fitted closely to every inch of my body. My hair was swept over one shoulder, and my lipstick matched the dark red shade of the dress exactly. Beside me stood Kohen Stafford, looking calm, powerful, and utterly lethal in his tailored dark suit, his hand resting lightly against the small of my back. Every single camera in the room turned toward us, flashbulbs exploding like a storm of white light. I walked down the marble steps slowly, my heels making a sharp, clear sound against the floor as the crowd parted for us like water. "Kaisley?" Theodore stammered, his eyes wide as his mouth fell open slightly. "What are you wearing? What is this?" "Kaisley? Who is that with you?" Judith gasped, stepping back as her smile vanished. "Why is Kohen Stafford here?" "Good evening, Theodore, Judith," I said, my voice smooth and carrying clearly across the quiet room. "You both look like you've seen a ghost." Theodore quickly tried to recover, stepping forward and reaching out to grab my arm. "Kaisley, what is the meaning of this? You're late. The bankers have been waiting for an hour. And why are you holding hands with Stafford? We have a deal to sign." I shifted my weight slightly, letting his hand grasp empty air. "Don't touch me, Theodore, and there is no deal." "Are you crazy?" he hissed under his breath, his face flushing dark red as he dropped his voice. "The press is right there. Stop making a scene. Get up to the stage right now so we can announce the engagement and the loan deal before you ruin our stock price." "You're right, Theodore," I smiled coldly, turning toward the stage. "Let's go to the stage. Everyone has been waiting long enough for a show." I walked up the wooden steps of the stage, tapped the microphone twice, and looked out over the room. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight at the St. Regis. For the past 3 years, Thompson Design and Development has worked to change the skyline of this city. Today was meant to be a celebration of a multi-million-dollar funding deal and a celebration of my upcoming marriage to my CFO, Theodore Griffin. However, My father always taught me that when you find rot inside the frame of a building, you don't paint over it, you don't try to hide it, you rip it out by the roots before it brings the whole structure down. Loud whispers broke out through the crowd as Theodore froze at the bottom of the stage steps, his rehearsed smile completely vanishing. "Kaisley, that's enough!" Theodore snapped, taking a threatening step up the stairs. "Step down from the mic right now." As of 6 o'clock this morning, Theodore Griffin has been officially removed from his position as Chief Financial Officer of Thompson Design and Development. His access to our bank accounts has been permanently revoked, and his personal authority to sign contracts on behalf of my company has been canceled. Loud gasps erupted across the room as a board member shouted from the front row, "Kaisley, what are you doing? You can't fire the CFO on live television." "I can, and I just did," I replied coldly. "Furthermore, my engagement to Theodore Griffin is officially broken. It seems his attentions and his loyalty were being spent elsewhere." I reached into my clutch, pulled out a small black remote, and pointed it at the massive projection screen behind the stage. The screen flickered to life, replacing the corporate tower renderings with a high-definition video feed recorded 2 days ago in my private office. The audio played crisp and clear over the ballroom speakers. "We don't need to worry about the steel inspections," Theodore's recorded voice echoed through the hall. "I swapped the mill certificates this morning. The cheap alloys saved us $6 million on the lower levels alone." "What if Kaisley checks the dock logs?" Judith's recorded voice followed. "She spent all night looking at the structural reports." "Theodore trusts me," Theodore scoffed on the recording. "He thinks we're getting married in 6 months. He's so focused on his drawings that she doesn't check the financial back end. Once the loan clears tomorrow, we transfer the excess $50 million to the shell company in the Cayman Islands, and we start pushing the board to vote her out." The video cut off, leaving the entire ballroom in dead, suffocating silence. Judith stood frozen in the middle of the crowd, her face completely drained of color as champagne spilled over her trembling hands. Theodore stood paralyzed, gaping up at the screen, while 300 of New York's elite stared at him in absolute disgust. That video was fake. It's a deep fake. She edited that together to ruin me." "Save it for the grand jury, Theodore," I said smoothly. The heavy double wooden doors at the back of the ballroom slammed open, and Agent Donovan marched into the room alongside 6 armed federal officers. "Theodore Griffin, Judith Abbott, FBI," Agent Donovan boomed over the crowd. "Stand where you are and put your hands where we can see them." Before Theodore could even turn around, 2 agents grabbed his arms, pulled them behind him, and snapped heavy steel handcuffs around his wrists. "Kaisley! Kaisley! Wait!" Theodore screamed as he was forced down toward the floor. "You can't do this to me! I loved you! We built this company together! You need me!" "I built this company alone, Theodore," I whispered, looking down at him from the stage. "You were just a bad investment I forgot to sell." "Kaisley, please!" Judith sobbed hysterically as the agents cuffed her hands behind her back. "It was all Theodore's idea. He manipulated me. He promised me money. Kaisley, tell them to stop. We were like sisters." "Sisters don't leave each other to die in the dark, Judith," I replied coldly. I watched silently as the federal agents dragged Theodore and Judith out of the St. Regis ballroom, their desperate screams fading down the hallway while news cameras flashed non-stop. Kohen stepped up on the stage beside me and took the microphone from my hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, as of 7 o'clock this morning, Stafford Equity holds a controlling stake in Thompson Design and Development. Kaisley Thompson remains the sole, absolute CEO and principal architect of this firm. Any board member who wishes to challenge her leadership is welcome to sell their shares to me by midnight tonight. Otherwise, sit down, keep quiet, and let her build this city." 6 months later, I stood on the private outdoor balcony of the 50th floor of my completed tower on 4th Street. The building was fully finished, constructed with the highest grade American steel that had been personally tested by Charlie Murillo and his team. It stood taller than almost everything around it, a bright monument of clear glass and steel catching the evening light over Manhattan. Theodore and Judith were currently sitting in a federal prison upstate, awaiting their final sentencing for wire fraud, corporate theft, and illegal material substitution. They were facing 20 years each without parole. Their reputations were gone, their assets seized, and their lives completely destroyed. A pair of strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind, pulling me back against a solid chest. I leaned my head back against Kohen's shoulder, watching the sun drop below the horizon and paint the sky in deep shades of gold and purple. "You've been standing out here for 20 minutes, Mrs. Stafford," Kohen whispered near my ear. "Cold?" "Not even a little bit," I smiled slightly. "The board just approved the expansion plan for the Chicago project. Total control stays with you. No oversight, no external committees. Exactly how you wanted it." I turned around slowly in his arms to look up at his face. "You know, you never did tell me why you were really waiting outside my apartment building that morning. 4 years is a long time to watch someone from the shadows, Kohen." I saw a woman with incredible talent surrounded by weak, greedy people who were using her light to warm themselves because they had no fire of their own, Kohen confessed, his intense expression softening. "I was just waiting for the day you woke up and realized how powerful you actually were." "And if I had never woken up?" A dark, quiet laugh escaped his chest. "Then I would have burned Theodore Griffin's life down myself, but watching you do it was much more fun." I looked back out over the glowing skyline of New York. In my past life, I was naive, soft, and blind to the evil standing right beside me. I let 2 parasites bleed me dry and throw me away like trash in an open pit. But destiny gave me a second chance. I didn't just rebuild my company. I built an untouchable empire, found a true partner who matches my strength, and buried my enemies deep beneath the ground I walk on. They tried to end my life in the dark. Instead, they gave me the whole world. Did Kaisley's ice-cold payback leave you wanting more? If you loved watching her tear down her treacherous ex and build an untouchable empire with Kohen, hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss another high-stakes betrayal and rebirth drama. Drop a comment below letting us know your favorite moment of revenge.